So, let's talk about the architecture of trust. Is our ability to trust someone just a fixed part of who we are? Well, today we're going to challenge that whole idea. We're going to see how it can be rebuilt, literally one piece at a time. Okay, let's just dive right in with the big one. Are some people just born mistrustful? I mean, it can definitely feel that way, right? But as you're about to see, that's not really the whole story. You know, we usually think of trust as this gut feeling. You either have it or you don't. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if trust isn't some passive emotion, but an active skill, something you can actually practice and get better at over time? And that brings us to our first big question. Is trust a choice? Let's dig into this idea that it's a personality trait that isn't set in stone, that it's actually something you can change. When psychologists talk about trust, it's not some vague, fuzzy concept. It's actually a specific part of what they call agreeableness, one of the big 5 personality traits. It really just boils down to your willingness to assume people have good intentions, to share things about yourself, and to, rely on others. It's a basic pattern of how you relate to the world. Okay, so check this out. On one side, you have what most of us kind of believe. My personality is what it is, and my ability to trust is fixed. But the reality, which is backed by a ton of research, is that personality is malleable. It can change. And the most exciting part of that? It means you can actually take steps to become a more trusting person. But wait a minute. If we can learn to trust, that must mean we also had to learn how to be mistrustful in the first place. So let's get into how our past experiences build the patterns that we live with today. Look, your brain didn't just decide to be mistrustful for no reason. It learned it as a defense mechanism, a way to protect you. Maybe you were punished for making simple mistakes or criticized when you tried to share how you felt. Maybe your needs weren't always met, or you went through a betrayal in a relationship, or worked in a place where one tiny error had huge consequences. Your brain learned a very clear lesson. Letting your guard down is dangerous. And this really gets to the heart of it. In those kinds of environments, always expecting the worst, scanning for mistakes, double-checking everything, that didn't feel negative. It felt smart. It felt protective. It was your shield. But here's the crazy twist. The very things that once kept you safe can end up keeping you stuck. This is what our source material calls the protective pattern paradox. So, what does this low trust stuff actually look like in daily life? Well, it's probably not a voice in your head saying, "I don't trust anyone." It's more subtle. It's things like finding it impossible to delegate or constantly monitoring other people's work. It's that discomfort with sharing what you really think or feel, or never asking for help. It's that deep down feeling that if you want to prevent a problem, you have to do it all yourself. Sound familiar? And at the end of the day, every single one of those behaviors has the exact same goal: to lower your risk of getting hurt, being blamed, or feeling rejected. They're all a defense system you built based on past experience. Now, the problem isn't the patterns themselves. The problem is they have a really, really long shelf life. They just keep running in the background, kind of like old, outdated software on a brand new computer, long after the original threat is gone. And boom, here's the paradox in full effect. The things you do to avoid conflict, like micromanaging or putting up walls, can actually cause the exact tension you were trying to prevent. And when that happens, what does your brain say? See, I told you people can't be trusted. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, a vicious cycle. So the big question is, how do we break out of this cycle? Well, let's talk about a really simple but powerful tool, the one experiment method. This is all about rewriting your story one tiny action at a time. Here's how it works. It's super simple. First, you identify one of those old assumptions you have. Second, you pick a really small, low-stakes situation to test it in. Third, you try a new, more trusting action. Fourth, and yeah, this is the tough one, you have to resist that urge to jump in and control everything. And then step 5, you just watch. You just observe what really happens. You basically become a scientist in your own life. Okay, let's make this real. Let's say your old belief, that assumption you've had forever is, if I don't check their work, it's absolutely going to be a disaster. But then you run your little experiment. You let a coworker handle one small thing without you looking over their shoulder. And afterward, you collect your new data. And that new data might just be, I didn't check, and it was fine. The world didn't end. Now, that might sound like a tiny thing, but those little experiments are the actual building blocks of change. So let's look at how these small shifts can lead to a whole new way of being. See, here's the magic of why this works.
Every single time you run an experiment and the disaster you predicted doesn't happen, your brain takes note. It's like a little clerk inside your head takes out a file and stamps it with new evidence. Observation, maybe people are safer than we thought.
Look, one experiment isn't going to change your personality overnight. Of course not. But as you collect more and more of this new data, this new evidence, it starts to build up. And over time, those new experiences start to become new, more flexible beliefs. And that is the absolute key takeaway. It all starts with just one small, intentional experiment in a situation that doesn't feel terrifying. That's the first step to rewriting years of mental programming. You don't have to take some massive leap of faith, you just have to be willing to test one little assumption. So we'll end with this question for you. Forget about the huge, abstract goal of becoming a more trusting person. Just think about today. What is one small experiment you could run? What one new piece of data will you go out and collect for yourself?